I shouldn't remember the way her voice dipped when she said my name, but I do. Like she was testing how it sounded, slow and careful, as if saying it too fast might break something fragile in the room. She was standing too close, though neither of us moved back. Her perfume was soft, almost hidden under the faint smell of coffee on the counter, but it carried enough to make the air feel different around her. She had one hand resting on the edge of the table, the other curled loosely at her side, like she wasn't sure whether to let it hang there or lift it toward me. She was older, yes, older in a way that made every small movement deliberate, like she had already learned where to waste energy and where not to. The faint line at the corner of her mouth deepened when she smiled, though she wasn't smiling now. She was watching me, and I didn't know if she wanted me to speak or stay quiet. So I spoke anyway, too quickly, too casually. Something about how late it had gotten, how I should probably head out soon. The kind of thing you say when you're buying time. Her eyes didn't blink. "You'll regret this tomorrow," she said. Finally, her voice low enough that I almost missed it. My throat felt dry. "Then let's make tonight worth it." The words came out softer than I meant, more like a confession than a line. And when she didn't answer right away, when her lips parted just enough but nothing came, the silence thickened between us. I tried not to move, but my hand betrayed me, fingers drumming against my thigh, restless. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her gaze flicked down, then back up, and suddenly the space felt smaller, the walls closer. I leaned on the counter next to her, close enough that my sleeve brushed hers. It wasn't much, a tiny, accidental touch, but it lit something in my chest I couldn't name. She didn't move away. Her breathing was steady, but I could feel her hesitation in the way she adjusted her weight, shifting slightly toward me, then catching herself. Her shoulders drew back, like she was holding onto her composure by a thread. She started, then stopped. Her hand lifted, only half an inch, then fell back against the table. I wanted to fill the silence, to tell her she didn't need to finish. But I stayed quiet, afraid anything I said would break the moment in two. Her eyes met mine again, and this time she held them too long, past the point of comfort, into something else, something that left me barely breathing. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Even that seemed too loud. Her fingers twitched against the wood, then brushed against the back of my hand. Not fully, not even enough to call it a touch, but the ghost of one. My skin buzzed like she'd set fire to it. I didn't move away. I couldn't. "You don't know what you're asking for," she whispered, almost to herself, though her lips were only inches from mine. My mouth opened, but before I could answer, the front door rattled. A key in the lock. We froze. Her hand snapped back. My pulse thundered in my ears. And when the door swung open, spilling unfamiliar light across the room, she looked at me, wide-eyed, caught, as if the night had just been stolen from us. The sound of the key still echoed in my head long after the door closed again. It hadn't been for her, just a neighbor fumbling with their lock down the hall. But the way she'd stiffened, the way her hand had snapped back like I'd burned her, stayed lodged between us. She turned first, busying herself with straightening a stack of unopened mail, though none of it needed straightening. I caught the tremor in her fingers before she tucked them against her side. "You should go," she said quietly. I should have. Any sensible person would have. Instead, I leaned against the doorway and asked, "Do you want me to?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp, almost accusing, before softening. "Don't ask questions you already know the answer to." I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. There it was again, that deliberate weight in her words, like every syllable carried both an invitation and a warning. She'd told me once, weeks ago, about the man she used to love. The kind of love that hollowed you out when it ended. Divorce papers, court dates, a long stretch of silence where she swore she'd never let anyone close enough to hurt her again. I hadn't asked why she was telling me. I think she wanted someone to hold the story, even if they weren't old enough to understand all the pieces. And me? I hadn't had much of a story to give in return. A few college girlfriends, nothing that lasted. Mostly, I just remembered how invisible I felt to women my age. With her, I was anything but invisible. That difference hung heavy now. The years between us. The way the world would read this wrong, no matter how right it felt standing in the same room. I caught myself staring too long at the curve of her shoulder beneath the loose fabric of her sweater. She shifted, and for a heartbeat I thought she'd caught me looking. Instead, she stepped closer, brushing past me as if to leave. except her shoulder grazed mine, and the faintest touch lingered. I froze. Her breath stirred the air against my neck when she spoke. This is a mistake. Then why does it feel? My voice cracked. I didn't finish. She hesitated behind me, and I heard the small, nervous sound of her nails clicking against the wood of the doorframe. She wasn't leaving. I turned. The space between us was too narrow now, every inch charged. Her hand lifted, almost without permission, and rested briefly on my arm. Not long enough to claim anything, not short enough to mean nothing. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, pulling us closer, binding us tighter than any confession could. And when her fingers finally slipped away, the warmth of her touch stayed, searing into me, making it clear neither of us was walking away from this untouched. The knock came sharp and sudden, just as her hand had almost settled into mine. We both flinched. She drew back so quickly it was as though my skin had burned her. My pulse hammered, each beat too loud in the silence that followed. Another knock, this time paired with a voice, muffled, male, familiar. "Hey, you home? Thought I'd drop that book off." Her lips parted in a soundless curse. I glanced at her, wide eyes, stiff shoulders, and she looked at me like I was a problem she didn't know how to solve. She pressed a finger to her lips, motioning for silence, and padded quickly to the door. My chest ached from holding my breath. She cracked the door just enough to speak. "Now's not a good time." Her voice was low, clipped, like she'd rehearsed calmness she didn't feel. The friend laughed softly. "Busy? Fine, fine. I'll leave it here." Footsteps receded. Silence again. She closed the door too gently, leaning against it for a moment longer than necessary. Her eyes stayed shut, chest rising and falling in uneven waves. When she finally turned toward me, I was already watching. "That," she started, then shook her head. "That almost ruined us," I finished. Her gaze pinned me in place. "It can still ruin us." I wanted to argue, to say the world didn't matter. That perception wasn't stronger than what pulled me to her. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stepped closer. The distance shrank to almost nothing, the air thick between us. She didn't move away. Her breath touched my cheek when she exhaled. My hands trembled at my sides, aching to rise, to close the impossible space between us. Her eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up, then down again. The silence roared louder than any storm. "You don't understand what people will think," she whispered, though her body leaned almost imperceptibly toward mine. "Maybe I don't care. You should." I wanted to. I tried to. But the curve of her mouth, the faint tremor of her lower lip, undid me. My face tilted before I could stop it, close enough that I felt the heat of her skin, close enough that one breath more and there would be no return. She didn't retreat. But at the last second, at the precise, unbearable moment before lips touched, she turned her head, her cheek brushing against mine instead. The gentlest contact, softer than any kiss, but more dangerous for what it held back. I exhaled shakily. She lingered there, cheek to cheek, her hand finding my sleeve, gripping it as though to steady herself. "We can't," she whispered. Her grip tightened. She wasn't letting go. And in that fragile, stolen pause, I understood. Resisting was only pulling us closer, binding us with a tension neither of us knew how to break. It was late when she finally let me back inside. Too late, maybe. The apartment was dim except for the glow from a single lamp, soft light cutting across her face. She looked tired, not in a way that begged for rest, but in the way someone looks when they've been holding a heavy truth too long. "I shouldn't have let this go on," she said, barely above a whisper. I froze halfway into the room. "Then why did you?" Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and vulnerable all at once. She didn't answer. I stepped closer, the floor creaking under my weight. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at me, and then pretend you don't." Her breath caught. She shook her head, turning slightly away, but I moved with her, unwilling to let the distance grow again. "You're too young," she said finally, the words breaking. "I should know better." "Then stop knowing better," I whispered, standing so close now I could see the tiny shiver that ran through her. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, she let her forehead rest briefly against my chest. Just a second, but enough to send heat flooding through me. My hand lifted, hesitant, shaking, and brushed a strand of hair back from her face. Her eyes fluttered shut, like she wanted to fight it but couldn't. "You'll regret me," she murmured. I leaned lower, my voice nearly against her ear. I've done a lot of things I regret. Wanting you isn't one of them. Her breath hitched, warm against my skin. She gripped the front of my shirt, knuckles white, as though letting go would undo everything. The silence between us turned dangerous. Every inch of her was too close, too warm, too undeniable. My lips hovered near her temple, my hand still resting against the curve of her cheek. I could smell the faint trace of wine on her breath, feel the tremor in her body where it leaned into mine. Her eyes opened slowly, locking onto mine, and I knew I'd crossed into a place we couldn't retreat from. Say it, she demanded softly. My throat worked. I can't stop thinking about you. Her lips parted, her grip on me tightening. You shouldn't. But I do. The confession cracked something between us, something fragile that had been holding the dam shut. She stared at me, torn, and then let out a shaky laugh that sounded more like surrender than humor. Her hand slid up, resting against my neck, thumb brushing the edge of my jaw. Every nerve in my body screamed forward, begged for the last inch of space to vanish. We hovered there, breath against breath, her lips trembling just shy of mine. And then, a sound. Her phone buzzing violently against the counter, screen lighting up the dark. She froze. And the kiss that should have happened hung between us. Unbearable, suspended in a silence too heavy to last. The phone buzzed again, insistent this time. She reached for it, her fingers fumbling before she finally swiped the screen. Her face went pale. I couldn't see the message, but I saw her reaction, the way her hand trembled, the way she pressed the phone against her chest like she could smother it. What is it? I asked, voice tight. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, putting her back to me, shoulders stiff. Silence stretched until it ached. Finally, she whispered, he knows. I blinked. Who? My ex. Her words landed like stones. He called earlier. Said he saw us. Together. The air left my lungs in a rush. Saw us. My mind ran back through every glance, every moment I thought was private. Maybe we hadn't been as invisible as I believed. She set the phone down hard on the counter, as though she couldn't stand to hold it any longer. He'll use this. Twist it. Make me look, her voice cracked. She bit her lip, hard. God, what was I thinking? I stepped closer without meaning to, my hand hovering just above her arm. She didn't move away, but her body went rigid, caught between wanting me near and knowing I was the reason everything suddenly felt dangerous. Her breath came fast, uneven. She turned, and in that half-turn, her shoulder brushed against my chest. The contact was accidental, but it set both of us off balance. You should go, she said again, softer this time, before I ruin us both. But she didn't move aside. Her body was still angled toward me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her. Her hands twisted together, restless, as though she needed to touch something but didn't dare. I reached out, finally letting my fingers graze hers. A whisper of contact, nothing more. She flinched, but didn't pull back. Let him think what he wants, I said quietly. I'm not leaving you because of him. Her eyes snapped to mine, wet but fierce. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then explain it to me. She shook her head, but her silence betrayed her. She wasn't pushing me away. She was drawing me in, even as fear rooted her in place. The tension broke when she stepped past me, brushing too close, her shoulder grazing mine. My hand instinctively caught her wrist. She froze. For a heartbeat, neither of us breathed. Her pulse thudded under my fingers, quick and unsteady. When she turned back, her face was inches from mine, her eyes blazing with something that was half terror, half hunger. I can't let this happen, she whispered. And yet she didn't pull her wrist free. Instead, she stepped into me, one deliberate step, closing the last of the distance, until I knew. She had made her choice, and nothing was going to stop what came next. Her step into me was deliberate, dangerous, like she'd already decided what she'd later try to deny. The lamplight caught her face in half-shadow, her breath uneven as it mingled with mine. We shouldn't, she whispered, though her body betrayed her, chest rising against me, her hand caught in my grip, trembling but unyielding. Then tell me to stop, I said, my voice low, almost breaking. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just silence. Just the faintest shake of her head, barely perceptible but impossible to misread. The world outside ceased to exist. No neighbors, no ex, no rules. Only the impossible closeness of her body and the way every inch of space left between us hummed like a live wire. I lifted my free hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. My fingers brushed the line of her jaw, light as breath, and she shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of touch long denied. Her forehead tipped forward until it touched mine. A pause. A surrender. "You'll regret this tomorrow," she breathed again, softer this time, almost broken. "Then let's make tonight worth it." The words hung there, the same as before, but now they weren't reckless. They were inevitable. Her hand slipped from my grasp only to climb higher, resting flat against my chest, feeling the thrum of my heartbeat. The press of her palm was desperate, like she needed proof I was real, like she needed to anchor herself. The silence stretched, unbearable. Our lips hovered a hair's breadth apart, the question hanging between us louder than any confession. Finally, she whispered, "If I let this happen, there's no going back." "Then don't go back," I said. Something inside her broke then, not in weakness, but in surrender. The fear didn't vanish. It burned with the desire. The years, the risks, the consequences, they were all still there, but none of it stopped her when she leaned in, when her mouth finally brushed mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't polished. It was messy, raw, half sob, half laugh. A kiss born out of restraint snapping all at once. Her hand slid up, fingers curling at the back of my neck, pulling me closer than I thought possible. I answered without hesitation, and for the first time, neither of us pulled away. The world outside could judge, twist, destroy, but here, in this room, it was just us. When we finally parted, breathless, her forehead rested against mine, eyes closed, lips still trembling. "There," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Now you know." And I did. I knew her fear, her longing, her surrender, all of it laid bare in that one impossible moment. And she knew mine. For the first time, there was no hiding. The kiss had ended, but its echo lingered. Her lips were still trembling, her breath uneven, her forehead resting against mine like she wasn't ready to step away. Neither was I. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't heavy this time. It was full, thick with the truth we could no longer ignore. Finally, she drew in a shaky breath. "We've made a mess of things." "Maybe," I admitted. My thumb brushed the back of her hand, still caught in mine. "But I don't care." Her laugh was small, tired, but real. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes soft now, stripped of the armor she always carried. "You're too young to be this reckless." "Or maybe," I said, leaning closer, "you're too old to keep running." Her smile broke then, quiet, reluctant, but genuine. She shook her head as though she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, she let her body lean into mine, her cheek resting against my shoulder. The weight of her was grounding, the warmth of her sinking into me until I didn't know where she ended and I began. I wrapped an arm around her, hesitant at first, then firm when she didn't resist. She fit there, perfectly, like she'd been meant to all along. Her voice came muffled against my chest. "People will talk." "They always do," I said softly. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't fear that held her still. It was thought, consideration. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were clearer, steadier. "This won't be easy." I nodded. "Nothing worth it ever is." Her hand found mine again, fingers slipping between mine with a slow certainty that felt more binding than any promise. I felt her squeeze, light but intentional, and for the first time, I believed she wasn't going to let go. We didn't need more words. The risks, the doubts, the difference in years, they were all still there, but they didn't matter in this moment. What mattered was the warmth of her hand in mine, the weight of her head leaning against me, the quiet that no longer felt like a prison but like a shelter. I pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, lingering there. She sighed, not heavy, not conflicted this time, but with something that sounded like peace. When she pulled back, her eyes shone. "So, we're really doing this." I smiled, brushing a thumb over her cheek. "We already are." And with that, she let out the breath she'd been holding for weeks, maybe years, and rested against me again. Two people, flawed, scared, but no longer hiding. Together. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?